Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. I'm here with the weekly astrology forecast for the week beginning tomorrow, July 27th through next Saturday, August 2nd. Um, the overarching theme for this week is Lady Venus. Lady Venus is changing signs midweek. And while on the one hand, Venus changes signs every 4 weeks, it's not as big of it's kind of like, Mercury or Mars. They move much more quickly. So we don't talk about them changing signs as a big deal, like I've been talking about all the outer planets changing signs. But the way that she's aspecting and the way that her degrees are coinciding with some of the aspects of the outer planets, I think is highly significant, and I'll get to why in just a moment. But yeah, there's an overarching theme here that's really starting this week. For the next lunar cycle of time, for the next 4 weeks, Venus is moving out of Gemini into Cancer. And it's worth starting with Venus is in the anaretic degrees of Gemini on Sunday, and she's biquintile Pluto and Aquarius. And so let's start to unpack what it means to be at the late anaretic degrees of a sign. That's often possibly associated with the shadow of that sign. So Gemini, the twins, is all about many perspectives. Everybody comes along. Gemini likes to get to know everybody, talk to everybody. If there is a shadow side, is that can be overly distracting and destabilizing. If you think about the idea that we're all a tapestry, right? So if we need all the different colors and types of fabric to be woven together to create this beautiful tapestry, but if there's absolutely no order, then maybe there is no strength, and maybe the tapestry doesn't look pretty. It looks chaotic. So there's this need for, at the anaretic degrees of Gemini, for us to be aware of where we might be too diffuse, and to remember that yes, all voices matter, especially with Venus lighting up the ideas of harmony and justice and balance and beauty and love, and everybody matters. That definitely makes sense, but also maybe rein it in just a little bit. Make sure that what we're talking about also feels, or what we're acknowledging also feels true, and is also something that, which the biquintile between Venus and Pluto, it's a harmonious aspect, it's creative aspect. Pluto's going to be inviting us to take a much bigger picture and be strategic in a way that is for the collective, and be able to have a new version of harmony. We also have Venus in Gemini active on Monday. Still at the anaretic degree, Venus is going to be both semi-square Mercury in Leo and then sextiling Chiron in Aries. So the same energy of just be a little bit wary of being too diffuse. There's going to be a need for us to kind of, I'm sensing almost speak truth or hold boundaries. There we go. And a semi-square is a challenging, stimulating aspect. And that's about our communication. That's about our heart-based communication. So maybe it's a good idea to take some time, even if we're not going to have a conversation about a boundary with anybody. Maybe we also just take some time at the beginning of the week to meditate, to value ourselves, to look at how we um, speak to and speak about and think about ourselves, because our boundaries are ways we know it are just an emanation of our self-talk and our vibrations and our thoughts about ourselves. And Chiron in Aries is really that personal wound that we get to have and figure out how to heal and nourish, becomes our gift to humanity. But it's a very personal feeling this week. We also have Mercury in Leo, semi-sextile Jupiter in Cancer. And so semi-sextile is also it's a challenge. There's some friction, but there's also opportunity, friction for growth. And so that's just it, the friction that we might see in our world, in our ability to decipher what is true, both for us and for our collective. If there is any friction, maybe it's a good idea for us to really take some time, look within, figure out what is true for us, be willing to speak our truth, and just in being who we are, The other thing that's coming through is maybe that's how we set our boundaries. The next aspect we have is also with Mercury and Leo, and that's going to be on Wednesday, the 30th. It's going to be semi square Mars in Virgo. So really, that's about our I am action oriented self, making sure that we pay attention to the details and making sure that we pay attention to the details because they matter for ourselves and for everyone. Virgo is also an everyone oriented sign. So our Mars I am drive can be made more robust by including ourselves as a part of the whole. And if we think about the idea that we're working with the new moon here, as that just kicked off a couple days ago, we're planting some seeds, we're manifesting some things. We're going to be even more able to manifest things when we think about how what we want to manifest can serve others. That's to me, and communication is Mercury is about communication, but I'm going to kind of lean on the energetic communication here. Next aspect is on Thursday. Thursday, Venus moves into Cancer. So no more anaretic degree of Gemini. Now we have another kind of anaretic degree, but she's at 0 degrees of Cancer. That's a different vibe. It's totally new. Everything is possible. Venus in Cancer is really going to support us in tapping into our emotional intelligence and also boundaries. Cancer is known as the crab. Crab has a hard outer shell because it's got a really soft, beautiful inside. And so I think we're going to be feeling more like we've got our sea legs under us as we are moving through the mid to the end of the week. And so we have Venus moving into Cancer. She's semi-sextile Uranus in Gemini. And so Venus is at 0 degrees Cancer. Uranus is at 0 degrees of Gemini. This is where I was saying that you can kind of start to see that Venus isn't just changing signs; she's dancing with the outer planets. So they're both at the same degree, Uranus and Venus, and a semi-sextile is friction for the purpose of growth, as I mentioned earlier. And the 0 degrees, they're both really inviting us to be kind of childlike with how we experience our world. And Uranus is about our communication. Gemini is going to help us to be in communication with everybody. And then or in all sorts of different types of communication, in collective unity consciousness communication. Venus in Cancer is also going to really help us to be strong in who we are, feel good about who we are, protect ourselves when we need to, but also really lean on our emotional and intuitive intelligence. That's the way through here. That's the through line, not just for this week. I would offer definitely through the end of the year and into next year. And I would offer forever in the future. How is emotional intelligence and intuition ever bad for humanity? At least not right now at this juncture. We also have on Thursday the Sun conjunct Mercury. And so Sun and Mercury are both in the sign of Leo. And that's going to really help our communications be regal and noble and for the enjoyment and upliftment of everybody. On Friday the 1st, we're into the month of August. We have Venus now at 1 degree of Cancer, and she's going to be squaring both Saturn first at 1 degree of Aries and then Neptune at 1 degree of Aries. So again, see how she's kind of dancing with these. So we had the Uranus light up with Venus. Now we have Saturn and Neptune, and they're both at the same numerological degree, the 1st degree. We're still calling them anaretic degrees. It's still very new. Anything's possible. Squaring action is breakdown to breakthrough. Squaring action is challenging action. So, and Saturn's going to feel a little bit restrictive. Saturn's going to be a little bit like the flows are going to be shoring up, and we're going to be invited to maybe even kind of release a little bit so that then very soon after Neptune can come in. That square is going to help us erode some boundaries that are ready to be eroded and find new higher ground, find new ways of seeing and being, move through the illusion and delusion of the limitations that we've been taught or that we've come to believe, and really lean into, once again, our emotional intelligence, our intuitive intelligence. And then that brings us to Saturday the 2nd. We have Venus still again active. Now she's at 2 degrees of Cancer, and she's quincunx Pluto at 2 degrees of Aquarius. See, I kid you not. Like she pinged Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, as well as Saturn, all in one week as she's changing signs. This is why I think like Venus in Cancer is actually another wonderful kind of gift and breath of fresh air for us. And we also have that day Mars in Virgo. Mars in Virgo is also quincunx Chiron and Aries, and quincunx means adjustments need to be made. It's not bad. It just means veer right a little bit, or bring an umbrella, or bring a raincoat, or make sure you got your bottle of water. Plan for something. It just means that there's going to be this kind of uh, will be good to be willing to ebb and flow, to be willing to move. If you think about a tree moving in the wind, the tree is strong because it's not just brittle. It is like, I have to be straight. If the wind blows, it can bend a little bit. It has some give and take. That's going to be kind of the closing of the energy here this week. And to have Venus quincunx Pluto, that tells us that the adjustments that are going to be need to be made are going to be about the future of the collective. And it's also going to be for us to really step up, I would think, and step into our own personal role at being the emotional intelligence, being the truth seekers, being the truth sayers, being the truth seers and beers and embodiers. And this doesn't mean, none of this is signaling a fight. None of this is signaling that there's a right and a wrong or a black and a white. It's more subtle, nuanced energy to support us in being precisely as we are, who we are, and in shining brightly. So I hope that you find this week to be sort of a breath of fresh air. I think Venus moving out of Gemini and into Cancer, as I mentioned, is a bigger deal than it normally is, because she's aspecting all these other things that are the generational changes that feel so new and a little bit unnerving to humanity. But a little bit of emotional intelligence and intuition for the purposes of justice and harmony and beauty and truth and love and balance, I vote yes. All right. Take good care. Have a beautiful week. I will see you next weekend for the